Business in the Community Ireland.
So thank you for joining today on what is a very grey and rainy day here in Dublin. But you're very welcome to the Business Work and Responsibly Mark information session. The purpose of today is to really bring you through at a very high level what the mark is, what the contents of the mark is, and what the certification process looks like. So we will bring you through that. We do welcome all questions. Of course, the purpose of today is for everyone to get an understanding um, of the mark, what its contents is, and how we define it. We invite you to use the Q&A function available through Zoom. If, however, that does not work for you, then please feel free to email my colleague and Mark team member Antonia Butler at abutler@bitci.ie. Sorry, bitc.ie. Over the next hour with any questions at all. As I mentioned, the presentation and panel discussion will be recorded. However, once the panel discussion concludes, we will stop the recording and then go ahead with the Q&A session. The purpose behind that is to kind of allow a little bit more privacy for the companies that do have questions that they would like to ask. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with BITCI, we are an NGO, and our purpose is to inspire, challenge, and facilitate businesses to bring about a sustainable, low-carbon economy and a more inclusive society where everyone thrives. We do that through a variety of mechanisms. We have education and employment programs, but where the mark sits is on the responsible business team. And essentially that has a network of members that come to us with sustainability or responsible business questions and kind of act as an advisory team for them. The mark is how we define sustainability on that team and how we organise our services. So it is more than just a certification. It is a kind of that framework for responsible business that we'll bring you through in a moment as well. So without kind of further ado, what is the Business Worker Responsibly Mark, or as you'll hear me call it, the mark? These are the companies currently certified to the mark. We have about 40 members certified to date, but we've had about, I think it's 70 companies go through the process over its 15-year history. We have a good cross-section, as you can see, of sectors across Ireland. We have finance, engineering, pharmaceutical, retail, food and drink are in there as well. And we also have a good section of kind of semi-state and private as well. So a very good cross-sectional analysis of businesses operating in Ireland. The mark was originally inspired by ISO 26000. That's the International Standards Organization standard for social sustainability. When that was launched, it was launched as guidance and still is guidance, so it's not a certifiable standard. So the purpose behind the mark was to make that guidance document a certifiable standard. However, as we all know, over the last 10 years, certainly sustainability and responsible business has grown legs and has really skyrocketed in how we define it and what it encompasses. And the mark has had to remain up to date with that. So we are informed by a number of ISO guidance and certifiable standard documents through peer-reviewed frameworks like the Global Reporting Index or the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. And as well, we take into account regulatory reporting frameworks like CSRD, of course. And all of that goes into informing the mark and ensuring that companies that do certify to the mark are reaching a standard of leadership that goes above and beyond what is expected through regulatory requirements or standard reporting frameworks. And very importantly, the mark is third-party audited by the National Standards Authority of Ireland. The NSAI do that third-party audit piece. BITCI will do all the preparation before that, but the third-party audit is very much independent and it is carried out, as I said, by the NSAI, not, of course, by BITCI. And that third-party verification piece is very important, not just to us, but also to the members who certify to the mark. One of the key differentiators for the mark is that it is a guided audit process. What that means is that it's not just a a kind of faceless questionnaire that you'd fill on online. It is very much guided. You work with me and my team, the responsible business work responsibly mark team, and we bring you through briefings. We make sure that every company that goes through the process is familiar with the mark content and the process and what is expected of them within the certification process. We carry out an initial assessment. The initial assessment is essentially a gap analysis, and it looks at how companies compare to the standards, and we work with the companies to identify any gaps in their responsible business practices. And then we advise them on how they can close those gaps prior to the audit by the NSAI. So the companies going into the NSAI audit are very much prepared and ready for that certification audit. This is the framework that I keep talking about. This is essentially all the topics in the mark standard that we assess companies to. There are a couple of things here that I think make the mark stand out compared to other voluntary standards. One, of course, is that the governance pillar there is quite extensive. It's the most extensive one we have seen in voluntary standards available in Ireland. And the reason behind that is that we really very much see that strong governance gives you that foundation that enables your other pillars to succeed. Without that foundation of leadership, of oversight, and ensuring that sustainability is intertwined and embedded in the business strategy, it's very hard to prosper in the other pillars. And that is why we put such an emphasis on that governance pillar. We also have an economic pillar, which you don't often see. The economic pillar looks at responsible products and services, which is essentially your value chain. So it looks at not just your supply chain, but also your marketing, your customer service, and your end-of-life considerations, and the environmental and social considerations you have within those, and how you address them. Business model impact looks at how you quantify your environmental and social impacts. Investment looks at how you looks at three main pools of money that companies have control of that goes back into the community. We look at those as tax, pension, and capital expenditure, and the environmental and social considerations you have around those. And then finally, responsible technology. Responsible technology looks at the technology use within your organization, and that includes AI, but is not limited to AI, and the environmental and social considerations and ethical considerations that you have within that technology use. I should say at this point as well that when we assess companies to the mark standard, we look at it through a lens of control. So we do understand that companies that certify to the mark are often subsidiaries of global organizations and therefore do not have control over the design of their strategy, but they do have control over how that strategy is contextualized and implemented at a local level. And so that is what we assess. So if you're looking at this and thinking, I have no control over the tax strategy, I can't be assessed to that. We do understand that, and a lot of the organisations that we have go through the mark would be within that kind of subsidiary of a global company kind of category. And we have three excellent panelists who'd be able to talk about that as well. Environmental pillar then kind of covers what you would expect in terms of climate action, circular economy and nature, all very familiar topics. And social looks at inclusive workplace, which is your ED&I. Sustainable employment, which looks a little bit more about your kind of internal offerings, your learning and development, your wellness, change management, etc. Community engagement, how you engage with your communities, and human rights. Now, each of those topics that we've mentioned there are assessed to the management system. So they've got split into 5 categories, which I'll go through in a moment. The management system is based on the International Standards Organization Management System. So if your company is certified to, say, ISO 14001, which is your environmental management system, or ISO 9001 in particular, your quality management system, you might be familiar with this language. If you're not certified to those, please don't worry. Again, it's a guided audit process, and we will bring you through all of this before certification. So essentially what the management system aims to achieve is that there is a system behind your objectives that enables you to achieve what you have set out to achieve. So context looks at the organizational context or stakeholder context behind your objectives. So ensuring that there is relevance to the objectives that you have set, and it's not just one person thinking that it would be a nice thing to do, that it is based on stakeholder impact or your impacts, risks, and opportunities assessments, etc. Leadership looks at that oversight piece, the accountability piece, and advocacy as well, making sure that leaders are providing that advocacy piece, are resourcing the subjects and the objectives, and setting you up for success as well. Planning and action is your objectives, but also the action plan underneath them. So great, you have your objectives. Now, how are you going to achieve them? What's your 1-year plan? What's your 2-year plan? What systems do you have in place, and what actions do you have in place that will lead you to success? Evaluation looks at your KPIs and metrics. And improvement then looks at that kind of annual review process. How are you kind of looking at all these elements of the management system and identifying areas for improvement or additional stakeholder feedback, improving the actions that you have to help you achieve your objectives, etc. And just making sure that the continuous improvement process is in place. We see a lot of companies now, especially kind of on the environmental objectives, have set very ambitious environmental targets, which is fantastic. But now we're coming up to 2030 when a lot of them were kind of set for, and now companies are starting to push those out a little bit because maybe there was too much ambition or they didn't have this system in place to help them achieve those objectives. So really what we're trying to do here is ensure that companies are set up for success, and that when they have set their objectives that are linked to context, that there is a system in place that supports the success and achievement of those objectives. As I said, it is a guided audit process. And so when you go through the process of the MARC certification, you get access to all of our guidance documents. This is just an example of one guidance document that we have. This is your oversight and accountability guidance document. And it goes into detail of every element of the management system from the previous slide, what that looks like for this particular topic, examples of targets, of actions, of KPIs, etc. So companies that sign up to the MARC often avail of this guidance, and it really, as I say, can help kind of embed that framework in the organisation. These are some of the benefits that we see through MARC certification. And I think what's really important to say here is that this is not just us saying, these are the benefits. This is the feedback that we've gotten from companies. This is what the companies are telling us are the benefits. And the benefits do vary depending on where a company is on their sustainability journey. So companies that are maybe just starting would see a lot of benefit in using that framework, using the MARC framework to establish responsible business and embed it across the organization, and really put in place that foundation that they can then build on and improve on through recertifications and over the years. It does foster collaboration. So we see a lot of organizations come in to do the MARC, and sustainability is one person's job, and it should never be one person's job. And so the MARC really helps kind of foster that collaboration, give that kind of sense of the sustainability language, what it means. And it's not just environment. There's so many different aspects of responsible business and sustainability, and everyone's role kind of has some element of it that they are responsible for. So just really understanding that and using the framework to explain that. As you kind of more mature companies coming through it, they would use it to provide recognition as best in class, as leaders. It also develops a good data gathering structure that can be used for other reporting and disclosure requirements. And again, that's that management system piece really enables you to get quality data. It obviously enhances reputation as employers that's serious about responsible business. And as we see, that's become more and more of a kind of a concern by Gen Z. And also what we've seen more recently is that companies use the MARC or appreciate the MARC because of that third-party validation from the NSCI, and they use that for rating systems and tendering as well. Finally, the MARC certification enables companies to join the Responsible Business Association. And essentially, the Responsible Business Association is a collection of organizations that are certified to the MARC. And it is governed by a voluntary steering committee of, I think, currently 8 certified companies. The purpose behind the Responsible Business Association is to give certified companies a voice in the direction of the mark, of the contents of the mark, of what we're trying to achieve. So it gives a piece of the mark back to certified companies, and it gives them, as I say, a kind of key voice in the future of the mark as well. It also acts as a very good kind of peer-to-peer networking piece and support piece and sharing of best practice, etc. This is just a sample from the standard, and this will actually be available on our website over the next week, so please do keep an eye out for it. But our standard, of course, covers every topic that I've gone through of the framework. This is an example from the community engagement piece. So it will give you the definition, the areas it covers, how it's aligned to SDGs and GRI as well, which is very important to us. And then on the standard, we also have what we call our maturity tables. Now, companies are not assessed to these maturity tables, but they are very good guidance pieces. And for every company that goes through the mark, we'll aim to get them to that integrator level. So every topic has a corresponding maturity table. And our aim of the mark, as I say, is to get to that integrator level on each of the topics. And then as you come back and recertify, there are stretch targets. Can you get to exemplar? Can you get to pioneer, etc.? And that is what we kind of aim to achieve for our organisations. And this is available through the mark standard. And we'll be publishing that community engagement piece as well. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our panel, but very briefly before I oh, sorry, no, that's I am going to introduce the panel now. Apologies, getting ahead of myself. So I'd like to introduce Barbara Ann Richardson, Sustainability and Public Affairs Manager from the Heineken Company in Ireland. Katrina Collins, Head of PMO in Core Market Group Financial Services. And Maeve McNamara, ESG Manager in Boots Ireland. All three of our panelists have been responsible for mark certification and recertification with their organisations, and they'll be sharing their experiences and what they see as the kind of benefit of the marks as well. So I'm going to stop sharing my slides and hopefully you can see our panelists' faces. Hi, everyone.
Morning.
Hi, Liz. Morning, everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us. As I say, we're kind of going to talk through a little bit about your experiences of mark certification and your advice and tips as well for any companies that are looking to go through the process. So Barbara, if it's okay, I might start with yourself. Heineken have been certified to the mark now for over a decade, I believe.
Yes. Yeah.
What makes you come back? Why do you come back to recertify? Why have you been coming back for a decade to mark recertification?
Thanks, Liz, for inviting us to participate in the panel and to the team there. But yeah, why do we keep coming back? And sometimes through the process, I ask myself that same question. But look, we're a global business, right? So some people obviously familiar with the Heineken brand. And we operate to a global sustainability strategy called Brew a Better World. It's here behind me. It might be backwards, I think, though. But anyway, you know, I think people, anyone who's in the sustainability space are probably familiar with Brew a Better World because it's been around for a number of years. But it would go through a number of kind of like updates and iterations, but very much at a global level. We're empowered then locally to kind of implement that. And what the mark allows us to do then is really to kind of look at how are we faring up against the expectations locally? What are our kind of peers and other leaders in this space? What are they doing? What can we learn from this? Yeah, like are we kind of, you know, when you showed the pillars there, Liz, you spoke a lot to the governance pillar. And I think for me, that would be the one pillar I would kind of really lean into and go, what that really kind of asks when, as a business, if you go through the marketing, are we set up for success? You know, how are we, you know, expanding the sustainability remit? How are we getting the right people to be involved? And that's where I think the mark really kind of comes into its own. It's all those breadth of topics. You know, we bring a kind of a continuous improvement mindset to projects, and having the guidance from BITCI, it's kind of like an outward in look. So it's like a new lens to put on everything that we're doing. So we really get to examine, you know, what's working, what's not working, what could we kind of do better on. And I said that like, are we set up for success? And I guess then once you've gone through the process, which we have, so we've seen a number of iterations of the mark, and we were just recently recertified in September last year. But once you've kind of gone through that, taken all the guidance, which is fantastic from BITC, it's then a source of real pride actually in the business. So you can stand over what you're doing. You are right now one of only about 40 companies that have the mark. We are the only drinks business who have the mark. And that's felt right throughout the business. So it's like, it brings credibility and that source of pride. So, for those reasons, we keep coming back to it, and really proud actually of being part of this group. So I hope that helps answer your question.
That was great. Thank you so much, Barbara Ann. And I suppose, Maeve, you probably have quite a similar perspective coming from a global brand. But Boots, similar to Heineken, I think, were the first drinks industry to certify to the mark, and Boots were the first retail company to certify to the mark. And you've been here similarly, I think, for about a decade as well.
We've been here a long time. It's our fifth time doing it. I think what it brings to sort of us, it sort of organizes things and brings people together. So as you said, there's a lot of ESG stakeholders in the business, and the mark, I sort of identifies them, I think, and brings them all together, and it tidies up practices and puts manners on things and keeps us between the ditches. So I think it's sort of like an organization tool. It's excellent. So for example, you could have meetings in the diary, say stakeholder engagement meetings, and that comes up. How are you managing your stakeholders in the mark? And you go, well, we have our stakeholder meetings, and then you look at the diaries, and they mightn't have a name in the diaries. The MD might be meeting the internal comms manager weekly, but they mightn't have the diary date mightn't have that name on it. I'm not saying it would say catch up or quick chat, but it wouldn't have the proper name maybe. So calling it what it is, it's the stakeholder catch-up meeting weekly and a small agenda, what is covered, because that's what's covered anyhow. So, but just making it more formal and making it so therefore you can draw on that evidence then for your audit. You can say, this meeting happens, this is the agenda, this is what's covered, and these are the examples of the ones that have happened in the last, say, 6 weeks or whatever. So it tidies things up, and even things like terms of reference for meetings to ensure those meetings are covering all of the sustainability pillar topics. So for example, they might be covering them, but they mightn't be doing it in a formal enough way because it's not covered in the terms of reference. So getting them into the terms of reference and having those terms of reference updated regularly, and the audit ensures that. So because you will want to demonstrate that every 3 years, so you'll have those terms of reference will be updated and reviewed. So it sort of puts manners on everything and keeps things organized, but also brings in stakeholders who mightn't necessarily realize that their work is sustainable business. So people might be pulling together in HR, someone could be pulling together gender stats, but they mightn't realize, well, that all feeds into sustainable business and sustainable workplace pillar, for example, and that those people are contributing to that in the company, and to bring them all together. So I think that's what I would see it does for Boots Ireland.
Great, thank you so much, Maeve. And it's great to kind of get the two different perspectives. So you and Barbara would be quite similar, but then have two kind of complementary but varying perspectives. Katrina, you probably have again a different perspective actually, because Boots and Heineken have been coming back and recertifying for about 10 years. Core Market recently certified for the first time.
That's right.
Perhaps the question to you is, well, why? What made the mark stand out to you, and why did you come to certify to the mark?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it might echo with a lot of people maybe on the webinar today listening in. So we had what we call the Green Team. We had an ESG committee that was established by the employees actually back in 2019, and it got great senior management and director level sponsorship. And our sponsor, the director of finance at the time in particular, was looking for some form of ESG certification, and really set us on that goal, saying, look, we want something recognised, well respected, And one of the things that really stood out for us with the mark was the fact that it is NSAI audited, which aligns it with the ISO. So we had a lot of running engagement with business in the community at that stage, over 15 years. And it's coming up to the 20-year mark, I think, at this stage. So we were very well aware of business in the community and the work that they do. We are and continue to engage with them actually in terms of their work out in the community with schools, etc. So we were familiar. I think it probably echoes something that Barbara Ann said there. The guidance that we got with the business in the community was extremely important to us. In fact, we looked at other certifications and that guidance just simply was not there. I would refer to it as hand-holding, and it genuinely was a key call out for us. So, but we're in financial services, as you just commented there. And while Core Market is part of a large group, we are an independent broker on our own. So we were looking to the financial services area, and we did see then, so the website, the Business and the Community website, is very useful for this. And I think you popped it on a slide earlier as well, looking at the other companies that are members of Business in the Community. And we noted that a lot of financial companies already are members and already are certified. So that put us in good company. We could reflect on these companies, some of whom that we do business with as well. So, so that support and that link to the financial services is very important to us. I think just maybe in terms of benefits then, because we're the newest ones and we have another year to go before we're going to go through a recertification. So it's even good for us to sit and listen to the benefits from Boots and Heineken in that regard. One of the things that we've noticed is that the directors and our senior management team have really taken on. There's a lot of pride actually around having achieved the mark. And one of the benefits going forward that we saw really like from the get-go was how it was an asset to us in completing tenders. Many people maybe listening in today might be in the public sector, or maybe you are submitting responses to tenders. You're starting to see ESG questions coming up. And we really, the work that we put into the assessment, we have been able to lift it and shift it and show it as evidence in our practices when we've gone to respond to tenders. So we do also see the added benefit in recruitment as well. Our HR department would be very keen on letting people know that's coming back an awful lot now when people are showing an interest in a job maybe that we have advertised. They want to work for a responsible business. So so that all came together for us really with the mark under business in the community.
Great. Thank you so much, Katrina. Really, as you say, again, kind of some similarities across everyone there, I think, but yeah, definitely everyone's kind of got their own benefits that they see as relevant to their own organisations. Looking at time, we might be kind of, I'm thinking for people listening in, hearing about kind of maybe your tips and recommendations for companies that are looking to maybe go through the certification. So Maeve, I might go to you first, if that's okay. What did you find useful through certification, and would you have any kind of tips or recommendations for companies again that are looking to perhaps kicking off this process or kind of initiating certification?
Yep, Liz, what I found quite useful was looking at the pillars and dividing them up and gathering all the evidence that I needed first, as I thought I had it, and just to put it into order. And then going out to the stakeholders and saying, okay, from the last time I have this, has there been any changes? And giving them, so the initial period where we're assessing the information is a long way from the audit. So you have a lot of time to assure people that if we haven't got it, we can close the gaps. There's a lot of assuring people not to worry about it, because people do want to engage with an audit and they do get a little bit sort of stressed that they mightn't be ready for it. So there is, one of the good things about the mark is quite a stretch between when you started to your audit date with NSAI. So you can assure people that we have time to fix things. And then of course there's the initial assessment, which you bring us through. So then you have a time to close any gaps anyhow. That assurance is a big piece for, I think, a big tip for people. And then as regards organising the material then for the audit, what I thought was useful was I had each of the pillars divided down. So say the 4 in governance, and then I had them with their headings. So the headings that you went through there, the management system headings, the context, the leadership, the planning, the actions, the evaluation, and the improvement. So I had that for every single one. And I put it in a slide deck for the actual audit now. So this was all material with 2 gauges to gather it up, but I had it all in a deck. And I had the links to the SharePoint so that I was able to share it for the auditor at the time. So if it was, say, 10 o'clock, I was doing decision making, I would have in somebody from the leadership team in the room. The links would be there to show the auditor, and the stakeholder involved, say it was the finance director or whatever, he would have, or she would have been prepped to know that this is the evidence that tells his story, and we have a link here if you want to talk to it, or if you want to share the link, I have it on the screen. So the deck was going the whole time for over the 2 days of the audit, and it was rolling on with, and people came into the room and joined the meeting for the audit. So that's that's the way we use it. We thought that was quite useful.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Maeve. Yeah, so using the categories and linking the evidence back in preparation for the audit. Katrina, actually, if I come to you here, because we still talk about core market slides for the audit and the organisation kind of behind them. And it's very similar to what Maeve said, is having those links and kind of that structure in place prior to audit. So from that kind of new certification perspective, again, Katrina, would you have any lessons learned that you could share with organisations?
Yeah, I definitely would echo something that Maeve referenced there. Is like it kind of tends to feel a bit like an exam, I will be honest. So what Maeve just said there about just having it ready for that interview, you've got it. You've got the information. I promise you have it. So just handing the person that's going into that interview to go, look, there's the link. Just click on the link. That will be the evidence. That it's just, and of course practice that as well. So like, I suppose my background, I'm a head of a project management office, so I'm going to go back to what I know best. I'm going to tell you the biggest lesson learned for us really was, like, it's a project and you should run it like one. So you may not, maybe you're a different organization to us and you don't have a project management office, you don't have project managers, but you'll put a leader on this. Put one person on this that's leading it. Give them support, give them authorization from senior management level, like you would with any project. Let them set those objectives then and set the timeline. That doesn't mean that leader is doing all the work. So it's like what Maeve said there. Other people are coming together in a project team. They're showing you the evidence. And again, I'm going back to what was referenced earlier. You will just, your mind will be blown by how much of this you are already doing. Maeve spoke earlier about, look, the meetings are happening. We're just not naming them properly. We're not putting the agenda into the meeting, and we're, maybe we just need to tighten up a bit on how we're taking minutes of meetings, but you're doing it. So, but put that leader in, let them coordinate that work and give them that team that's going to support them with it. So I suppose maybe one of the things that we did in addition to that was just, we did set a target deadline for ourselves. And it was a very, very achievable one, I have to say. So basically, we want to be certified by, maybe it's the end of December 2027. That seems like it's really far away right now, but just set the target. Make sure you let your team, business, and the community know that you've set that target. Make sure that it is realistic, like all the SMART goals, and then just get that buy-in and move towards it as a project. But I would definitely say what David said earlier, you're doing so much of this already. If you let the business and the community team help you put the structure around it, you will see everything fall into place, for sure. So treat it like a project and run it like a project, and you'll get there.
Thanks, Katrina.
That's it, really.
Very insightful. No, very insightful. Thank you. And it is great to have that kind of PMO perspective as well. And then Barbara Ann, I suppose as I know everyone's a global company, but as a kind of global company, Heineken Ireland, you have a global strategy. Do you have any kind of additional recommendations for companies going through or about to go through certification?
Yeah, I echo what both Maeve and Katrina have said, actually, just in terms of how you set yourself up. But as I reflect, and having gone through the mark a number of times, I think the biggest recommendation I would give, it follows on from what Maeve said. So the mark has a structure and it has pillars, and you're going to be examined on those, like the language that Katrina used. But I would nearly say, yes, review those and then take a step back a little bit and just say, well, actually, what are we doing? And that's for every business. So almost close, and don't shoot me now for this, I would nearly close the Business Working Responsibly mark book get your guidance, and then say, right, what are we doing here? And start to pull that then into what's that story that I want to tell? So I'm not a project manager. I'm probably more on the communication side. And I would have very much viewed it then, okay, what's the story that we want to tell that we're doing in Heineken Ireland? And then I will apply that back into the pillars of business working responsibly, Mark. And for each, like Maeve, I had set up then under each of those pillars, I had set up my deck. There was a summary slide. How am I going to answer governance under the 6 different pillars, and what evidence am I going to show under each of those? So that I had one of those slides for each pillar. And then it was a case of then when I identified who were the right people in the business, okay, what can they add to this? Because they're the other thing really that the Mark does is it kind of empowers people to tell their stories as well. So once you kind of reassure them, they actually kind of get a little excited then, because you're reassuring them, like, look, you're doing all of the right things. So they might have an opportunity to share the work they're doing, and they might never have had that chance before. So it's just kind of flipping that message around for people, having it set up. I also then, one of the things I did this time around that I hadn't the last time was I did get some project management support actually as well. And that was really, really useful. So it was that combination of storytelling and project management all kind of coming in together. And it became then really good team building. So we all felt part of this project, all part of this process together. And Katrina mentioned earlier that business in the community handhold, which I mean, the guidance that you gave is fantastic. And that pre-audit, where you very clearly identify under each of the pillars and under each of the headings where your strengths and where there might be things that are needed. I'd even go so far as to say at times that I think you nearly fell into counselling mode, I think, at times, where you might be like, oh my goodness, when you hit a brick wall. But I never came off one of those calls without feeling really reassured. And, as an individual, you can't have all the answers to all of the questions. Like, that is impossible. There are people around you in your business and outside your business that are there to help you. So, that's, they're the things. Yeah, like it isn't easy, but it's really, really worthwhile. Give yourself the time to set it up, use the guidance from business in the community, and allow your peers and your colleagues to tell the story. And it actually becomes enjoyable then actually when you get to audit day, because you're proud to tell the story, and you're proud, and also you want to learn. Most people in business want to know, like, is there something else I could be doing here? How can I make this better? So I think if you apply that mindset, be a good process.
No, that is great. Thank you so much, Barbara Ann. And I'm glad we could offer that support.
Yeah. I was glad too.
Yeah, it's great support, Liz and Lorraine and all the team. It makes a huge difference. And people mightn't realize that the whole initial assessment, then you close the gaps. That's enormous. That framework is really, really helpful, because you gather up everything, you have a good look at it with the team, and then you say, look, you've got a few gaps, and then you've got time to close them. And I agree with Barbara Ann's point there. It's a team building piece, because people can be very proud of it. So it's an opportunity to showcase the work that people have been working on, things that they mightn't have understood are so important, especially people who are, say, new to the business, or they might have understood. I think it's an excellent team building, and you are very proud when you present everything, you have everything gathered, and you can show it all, and that evidence can be used again and again, as Katrina said. It's not just for the auditor that day. It can be used to showcase what you're doing. Like, it comes up a lot. It was really useful for us for some of our awards. We did different awards that we've entered. It was really useful. It was all there for us for some of the sustainability awards that we entered. So it's multi-purpose, Liz.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And I think one of my favorite parts of the job is that when companies bring all this together, they're almost surprised at how much they are doing and all the good work they're doing. And it's an opportunity,
Totally.
I think, to gather all those stories, as you say, Barbara, and kind of put together.
I might give a build, if that's okay, just reflecting back on my previous answer. I think we're all aware that the language sometimes in sustainability can be daunting in and of itself. And sometimes we can almost stumble on the language that's there. And that's where I would go back to the structure of what are we doing already? You know, so use your own internal piece then, because that's the bit that most people are going to be familiar with. And it's getting that balance right. And then even I'm thinking, Liz, so once you've done that, and then in that pre-audit, how you've even set up, when you gave us back the response, even how you had set it up in that Excel spreadsheet, it made it just so easy to go in and identify, what do I need to do? What are the next steps here? So
fantastic.
thanks.
Well, thank you so much. Hopefully, I think, well, personally, I got a lot from that in understanding different perspectives, but also a lot of commonalities across the different sectors. I'm conscious of time, but Katrina, you do have a bonus question because recently you very bravely volunteered to be the chair of the steering committee for the Responsible Business Association, which, as I mentioned earlier, is kind of the collection of all certified organisations, and giving you a chance to kind of feed back into the MARC strategy. So I was wondering if you could just maybe tell us a little bit more about your aims as chairperson for the steering committee, and why maybe you volunteered for the role.
Yeah, thanks, Liz. Yeah, so like we've all just spent about 10 minutes talking about it. There is a large part of this is the support that you get from business in the community. So there is a component of wanting to give back to that support as well. So we've talked a lot about that, and it does energize you to support the ongoing cause and all of the various community outreach that happens within business in the community. So I think speaking then specifically about the MARC for us, we saw an immediate positive impact of our achievement of the MARC, and that definitely set us on that role of we want to continue this and we want to recertify, etc. So specific for me then, when I got involved in the committee last year and then said, look, I'll put my hand up and step up to be chair, one of the things that I really want to focus on this year is spreading awareness of the MARC. That's for companies already certified, and we've already spoken about this in the committee meetings. This is very much taking a thread that was already there within the association and the committee. It's just, how can we get more out of the MARC through brand awareness, through maybe business in the community events, and basically supporting each other as association members, communicating the MARC award certification. We're seeing it more and more now in, like I just said, maybe responding to tenders, maybe in hiring staff. Get the word out there that you are a well-run, responsible business. So that advocacy is hugely important. I think it's very high on the list. One of the ways we're doing that, and again, this is taking a thread that's already been underway in the association, which is launching these tendering workshops with the support, of course, of the business and the community team. And this is just getting us all together, all of the association members together, just look at how are we currently using the MARC to support our tendering process, and how can we build on that, maybe get a repository together, how can we support each other effectively. And then I know it's a theme that is important in business in the community, and that's around exploring new markets for the MARC, particularly maybe the medium-sized businesses. So I always consider core market to be small, and I have to remind myself we're not. With over 400 employees, we're quite large, and we found it tough, and we definitely could not have done it without the support of the MARC Association. So I definitely think there's that component of giving back, and just we want to ensure the longevity of the MARC and the association. So you've seen, companies like Maeve and Boots and Barbara Ann and Heineken recertifying on that process for numerous years now. And that's the committee that we want to be involved in. We want to keep it moving forward. So it's very much about getting the word out there, and maybe getting the word out to some smaller businesses and showing you can absolutely do this, because the more of us that have the MARC, the more it's going to get its status, and people will realize this is NSAI audited, it has its, concrete links to the ISO. This is a really solid certification. And that's the word that we want to get out there through the association this year. So hopefully that wasn't too long-winded, but yes, that's the goal for myself in the next 2 years.
Brilliant. Thank you, Trina. I'm very much looking forward to working with you on all those ambitions as well. So I'm sorry, Barbara Ann, Katrina and Maeve, thank you so much for your time. I'd ask you to stay on because we're going to go to Q&A now.